boy, Donald Trump sure backed these motherfuckers into a corner, didn't he, right? If you say he won the 2020 election, everybody knows you're either batshit crazy or purposely lying, right? Because there's no evidence that he won the election. It has been thoroughly debunked. But if you say he didn't win the election, then his base is going to turn on you, and you are going to be out of the club. So when his own vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance, is asked repeatedly, he can't fucking answer the question.
If you thought Vance's non-answer during the debate about the 2020 election was bad, watch this new interview with the New York Times.
In the debate, you were asked to clarify if you believe Trump lost the 2020 election. Do you believe he lost the 2020 election?
I think that Donald Trump and I have both raised a number of issues with the 2020 election, but we're focused on the future. I think there's an obsession here with focusing on 2020. I'm much more worried about what happened after 2020.
Okay, you hear that? There's an obsession with what happened in 2020. Yeah, there's an obsession with what happened in 2020 because for the first time in American history, a sitting president tried to overthrow his own government, claimed that he won an election that he knows he lost, and has still, to this day, refused to admit that he lost that election. His followers refused to admit that he lost that election. And now you refuse to admit he lost that election. By the way, before we play the rest of this clip, JD, how does it feel to know you're the next in line? Every single thing that Trump touches dies. That catchphrase was coined by Rick Wilson, and it is 100% true. Everything that gets involved with, everybody that gets involved with Donald Trump winds up going to shit. This is the beginning of the end of your political career. How does it feel to be the next Mike Pence? Let's carry on here.
Groceries that are unaffordable. And look,
Senator, yes or no?
Okay.
Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Let me ask you a question. Is it okay that big technology companies censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which independent analysis have said it cost Donald Trump millions of votes?
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again.
So now he's insinuating that information that wasn't privy to the American public prior to the 2020 election could have made a difference. Sort of like if people knew that he was involved in a Trump Tower Moscow ahead of the 2016 election, which was suppressed by him and his people and never came out. But I digress. We move forward.
Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Did big technology companies censor a story that independent studies have suggested would have cost Trump millions of votes?
Senator
I think that's
Vance,
the question.
I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020
And I've answered
election?
your question with another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours.
That's not how this shit works, Puddin'. But let's see what he winds up saying.
I have asked this question repeatedly. It is something that is very important for the American people to know. There is no proof, legal or otherwise, that Donald Trump did not lose the 2020 election.
You're repeating a slogan rather than engaging with what I'm saying.
Pause. The only slogan surrounding the 2020 election was "Stop the Steal," the one your guy came up with. Why can't you answer this question?
Engaging with what I'm saying, which is that when our own technology firms engage in industrial scale censorship, by the way, backed up by the federal government, in a way that independent studies suggest affect the votes, I'm worried about Americans who feel like there were problems in 2020. I'm not worried about this slogan that people throw. Well, every court case went this way. I'm talking about something very discreet. A problem of censorship in this country that I do think affected things in 2020, and more importantly, that led to Kamala Harris's governance, which has screwed this country up in a big way.
Senator, would you have certified the election in 2020? Yes or no?
I've said that I would have voted against certification because of the concern that I just raised. I think that when you have technology companies...
The answer is no.
When you have technology companies censoring Americans at a mass scale in a way that, again, independent studies have suggested affect the vote, I think that it's right to protest against that, to criticize that, and that's a totally reasonable thing.
The answer is no.
Ignore how all the court cases went. Ignore all the lack of evidence. Ignore the fact that Trump's own lawyers had to go into court and say they had no evidence and they were just repeating the lie that guy told them to so that they could try to save their own law licenses. Ignore all of that and just listen to what I'm telling you. I had concerns. So therefore, I can't tell you that Trump actually lost the 2020 election. There you go, folks. That's the guy who right now is vying to be a heartbeat away from the presidency in 25 days. Or win the election to be a heartbeat away from the presidency in 25 days. He wouldn't actually be a heartbeat away from the presidency until the end of January, but nonetheless would not have certified the election, knowing that a vice president does not have the power to do that, would have overturned a duly held election to install a dictator against the will of the people, and refuses to say that the guy who lost the 2020 election actually lost the 2020 election, because he is now number 2 in the cult. I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. We've got 25 days until this election, and this election gives us the opportunity to do something we have not had an opportunity to do up until now, and that is be done with Donald Trump forever. But Tom, he can still run in 2028. That's never going to happen. He will be in his early 80s in 2028 if he's still alive, still in the country, and still a free man. He will not be a factor in 2028. Even if he wants to be a factor, isn't in prison, is in the country, and wants to be a factor, the Republican Party will not allow it to happen. They keep taking a beating with him at the helm, and this is going to be the last ass kicking they're going to take as a result of Donald Trump being their flag bearer, if it goes the way we believe it will go. In 25 days, by electing Kamala Harris president of the United States of America, we can rid ourselves of Donald Trump forever. Is he going to shut up? No. Is he going to stop posting? No. Is he going to stop doing events? No. He's going to still run his mouth. He's going to have press conferences and all of his cases and all of his court appearances. He's going to talk to the press like he did in New York every fucking day until the end of all of this. But he'll never again have a chance to be president of the United States if we just elect Kamala Harris president in 25 days. We can rid ourselves of the prospect of a Trump presidency forever in 25 days just by voting for Kamala Harris. So some of you might be hearing that and going, so what are we talking about? We're talking about J.D. Vance, not Donald Trump. Well, the reason why I say we can rid ourselves of Trump in regard to this video from J.D. Vance is this guy has shown he's willing to do whatever the fuck Trump wants him to do. So by not electing Donald Trump, we can rid ourselves of J.D. Vance as well. Now, that doesn't mean his political career is over, but he's probably going to be damaged goods after this if they lose this election, right? He is going to be damaged goods even within the Republican Party, because he's going to be part of that Trump movement. Now, personally speaking, I think he's got a little bit more Ted Cruz in him than we believe. I don't think he really gives a rat's ass about Donald Trump or likes the man. I think he's using Donald Trump for the time being. I think Ted Cruz is going to be one of the first motherfuckers to turn tail and talk about how they were never really a true Trump supporter. They went along with it because that's what the Republican Party, the people who vote for the Republican Party wanted. Listen, J.D. Vance is going to become damaged goods after this. He's probably never going to have higher office after this, unless he can somehow finagle his way into higher office in Ohio, which I highly doubt. He's probably going to wind up being a lobbyist after this, but we have a chance to rid ourselves of these fucking kinds of people, because once we send a message to the Republican Party again in November, in 25 days, that we are fucking done with Trumpism, they will have no choice but to rip that fucking Band-Aid off and deal with that open wound until it scabs over. And that means getting rid of Trump, Trumpism, and all of the Trump fucking cronies. Because if they don't, they're going to keep sinking as a party. And they know it.